If your growth has been exhausting, you're not failing. You're just carrying it too tightly. You don't need to work harder on yourself. You need to relate to yourself differently because the goal isn't to become a perfect version of you. It's to become a safe home for the version of you that exists right now. And when you become that, integration happens naturally. Welcome to the Personal Mastery and Growth Podcast, where we explore the keys to unlocking your full potential and living your best life. I'm your host, Jose Johnson. Whether you're looking to make a breakthrough, overcome a challenge, or simply live with greater clarity, joy, and purpose, you'll find the tools and inspirations you need right here. So let's start your journey towards personal mastery and growth right now. Welcome back to the Personal Mastery and Growth Podcast, your go-to resource for practical tips, insightful research, and inspiring stories to help you unlock your full potential. I'm your host, Jose Johnson, and I'm an expert in the fields of mindfulness, mindset, and peak performance, and I am so excited to have you here with me today. Now, today's episode is for people who care about growth, people who reflect, people who do the work, people who actually try, and yet feel tired anyway. All right, so let me ask you something honestly. Have you ever felt pressure to be more mindful, to regulate better, to heal faster, to respond more consciously, to do the work correctly? And instead of feeling empowered, you felt tense? Well, not because growth is bad, but because it started to feel like another standard to meet. And that's what we're talking about today. Now look, personal growth usually starts out as relief. You learn something, you gain skill, you finally understand yourself. But for many people, something subtle happens over time. Growth shifts from this helps me understand myself to I should be better by now. Now, that shift is almost invisible, but your nervous system feels it immediately. Now, here's a pattern that I see most often. People don't stop growing. They start monitoring themselves constantly. They notice every reaction, every trigger, every moment of tension. And instead of curiosity, awareness turns into surveillance. You're not simply observing yourself, you're policing yourself. And that creates pressure. And pressure activates stress. And that brings us to the point of why should is a stress signal. All right, so let's slow down on this word because it shows up everywhere in exhausted, growth-oriented people. Should. I should be calmer. I should be healed. I should know better by now. I shouldn't be reaching like this. I shouldn't be reacting like this. Now, on the surface, should sounds motivational, but biologically, it's evaluative. And evaluation activates stress. Now, from a nervous system perspective, should implies a standard that you may not be meeting, a comparison to an imagined idea, the possibility of future failure, which means every should quietly asks, am I safe if I don't meet this expectation? Now, that question doesn't live in the thinking brain, it lives in the survival brain. So even when you're doing growth work, your system may be bracing by monitoring your performance, by scanning for mistakes, by trying to stay ahead of judgment. And here's the irony. The more self-aware you become, the more opportunities you have to judge yourself. So awareness stops being liberating and starts being pressurized. Now, that's not because awareness is bad. It's because awareness got paired with evaluation instead of compassion. So let's talk about when insight becomes just another job. Insight is powerful, but insight without integration, it becomes work. You're constantly asking, what's this about? Where did this come from? What belief is driving this? Now, that kind of inquiry, well, it is useful until it's nonstop. At that point, your system never gets to rest inside understanding. It stays mobilized, scanning for the next thing to fix. All right, so let's bring some biology into this because this is not just psychological. When you're constantly monitoring yourself, your brain shifts into what neuroscientists call performance and evaluation mode. Now, in this state, your attention narrows. Your error detection begins to increase. The brain begins to prioritize correction over connection. Now, this mode is incredibly useful for learning skills, but it's metabolically expensive. It requires a great deal of energy. It requires constant vigilance, and it keeps the nervous system slightly activated. And here's the key problem. Most people never turn this mode off. They evaluate their emotions. They evaluate their thoughts, their reactions, how they regulate, even in moments that don't require changes. So the brain never receives a signal. You're allowed to just be here. Instead, it keeps asking, what does this mean? What should I do with this? How do I improve this? And over time, this creates integration fatigue. Not because you're growing too much, but because growth never gets to settle. Learning without settling feels like pressure. Pressure blocks nervous system safety. And without safety, integration slows down. All right, so this is important to say clearly. The people most likely to experience integration fatigue are thoughtful, reflective, conscientious, and emotionally intelligent. They care. They want to do it right. And because they care, they turn growth into a responsibility. And responsibility, well, it creates pressure. And pressure, that creates stress. And stress blocks the integration. Now, this is one of the most important moments of this episode. So let's name it clearly. At some point, growth stops being something that you explore and starts becoming something that you depend on. Growth becomes tied to safety. If I understand this trigger, it'll be okay. If I fix this pattern, I won't feel like this again. If I learn to regulate better, things won't fall apart. Now, that's a subtle shift, but it's a heavy one because now growth isn't just about insight, it's about protection. Your nervous system starts believing, I need to stay on top of myself to stay safe. And that creates constant internal pressure. You're no longer growing from curiosity. You're growing from fear of falling back. And fear, even quiet fear, keeps the system mobilized. Now, this is why people can have great language, deep insights, years of deep self-worth, and still feel tense. Growth became a requirement instead of a resource. So, what are some of the signs that you've entered integration fatigue? Well, a few signals to listen for are when you feel like you're doing the work, but still feel tense. When you judge yourself for having reactions. When you feel behind in your healing and growth. When you intellectualize emotions instead of feeling them. When you feel pressure to be regulated at all times. Now, none of this means you're failing. It just means growth has become another demand. And here's the point. Growth was never meant to feel urgent because real growth is not frantic. It's not rushed. It's not perfect. And it's not always constant. Integration happens when the nervous system feels safe enough to change. Pressure does the exact opposite. Now, in the second half of this episode, we're going to explore the difference between insight and integration, why less often leads to more change, and how to shift from growth as work to growth as relationship. And we're also going to throw in a integration practice that's designed to relieve pressure, not add more. But for now, consider this. If growth feels exhausting, it doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It means you've been carrying it a little too tightly. Growth isn't something that you do to yourself. It's something that happens when the system feels safe enough to soften. All right, so let's start by clearing up something that confuses a lot of growth-minded people. Insight is understanding. Integration is embodiment. Insight is when you can say, oh, that's my pattern. That comes from my childhood. That's my nervous system doing its thing. Integration is when, in real moments of pressure, your system responds differently. Not perfectly, but differently. And here's the trap. A lot of people collect insights the way some people collect books. They have the language, they can explain the pattern, they can identify the trigger, but the nervous system hasn't had enough repeated, safe experiences to update. So the person thinks, I know all of this, why am I still reacting? Because you're not missing understanding. You're missing repetitions under safety. And this is where personal growth becomes exhausting. When you care deeply about growth, you tend to approach it like performance. I need to get better. I need to fix this. I need to respond correctly. But pressure is not a neutral ingredient. Pressure activates the threat system. And the threat system, well, it doesn't integrate very well. So the harder you push yourself to improve, the more your nervous system hears, something's wrong, don't mess this up. Now, that's not growth energy. That's survival energy. And survival energy leads to increased feelings of control, perfectionism, self-criticism, overthinking, emotional suppression, which is why growth can start to feel heavy. You're not integrating. You're just managing. Now, here's the paradox that mature growth always discovers. Less force creates more change. Not because effort's bad, but because integration requires safety, and safety requires softness. And this is why sometimes people have breakthrough moments when they stop trying to heal, when they stop forcing positivity, when they stop working on themselves for just a minute. They finally give their system space to update. So let's talk about what gentle actually means so that we don't get freaked out about it. When I say gentle, I don't mean passive. I mean non-punitive, non-urgent, non-performative. Gentle growth is still discipline, but it's discipline like training a martial art, not like punishing a mistake. It's repetition, it's practice, it's capacity building, but it's not self-attack. Hey there, feeling stuck? Spinning your wheels? Are you ready for a breakthrough? Well, then you need to hear this because I've got something that will supercharge your growth this year, and it's called The Mindset Makeover. Now, it's my new book and course that are designed to help you upgrade the mental software that drives your success. And inside, you're going to discover the mindsets that shape every decision, every habit, and every result. And you'll learn the science-backed tools to rewire your thinking for clarity, confidence, and unstoppable momentum. So whether you're aiming higher, trying to break free from old patterns, or finally stepping into that version of yourself that you know that you're capable of becoming, well, this is your launch pad. So don't wait. Head over to josejohnson.com/mindset to grab the book, join the course, or get both together. Again, that's josejohnson.com/mindset. And remember, it is what it is, but it becomes what you make it. And with the Mindset Makeover, you can make it something extraordinary. All right, so let's slow this down and make it usable. This practice is for people who are already self aware, who are already doing the work, but still feel tense while doing it. Now, the goal this week is not to fix your patterns. The goal is to remove pressure from growth so integration can actually occur. Now, think of it like loosening your grip so the mind can breathe. Step one, notice where you're turning growth into a test. Once a day, catch yourself in performance mode. Look for phrases like, I should be past this. I shouldn't feel this way. Why am I still like this? I need to regulate better. Then ask yourself, am I learning right now or am I grading myself? Now, that question is the first reset because learning is open. Grading is threat. Step two, name the should behind the pressure. Now get very specific. What is the rule that you're holding yourself to? Now, some examples could be I should always be calm. I should never be triggered. I should be healed by now. I should respond like the best version of me. Then ask yourself, where did I learn that rule? Most shoulds are inherited from family systems, from culture, from survival, but not always from truth. Step three, replace the rule with a relationship statement. Now, this is the heart of the practice. We're shifting from growth as performance to growth as relationship. Pick one phrase that you're going to use all week. So an example could be, of course, this is hard sometimes. Or this is a nervous system moment, not a character flaw. Or I can be in progress and still be worthy. Or perhaps I'm allowed to learn at human speed. Now, this is not a mantra to force positivity. It's a way of speaking to yourself that signals you're safe with yourself. And safety is what allows change. Step four, practice a 60-second integration pause. Now, once per day, during a real moment of activation, do this. Stop trying to fix it. Put one hand on your chest or your belly. Exhale slowly. Say your relationship statement just once. Ask, what would be a 10% more regulated response right now? Not a perfect response, a slightly more integrated one. This keeps growth grounded in capacity, not fantasy. Step five, run the progress evidence check so that your brain stops moving the goalpost. Now, at the end of the day, write down one moment that you notice a pattern sooner than usual. One moment you paused instead of reacting automatically. One moment you were kinder to yourself than you were last month. Now, this matters because your nervous system learns from evidence. If you only measure growth by perfection, you will always feel behind. If you measure growth by awareness plus choice, you'll see progress everywhere. Step six, do one non-improvement act on purpose. Now, this step is very sneaky, but powerful. Once a day, do something with zero self-improvement intention. Not to optimize, not to heal, not to regulate, just because you're alive. So, for example, you can listen to music just for pleasure. Go outside without tracking your steps. Watch something funny. Play an instrument. Do something creative with no specific outcome in mind. Now, this teaches your nervous system, I don't have to earn my right to exist. And that is a deep integration signal. So why does this practice work? Well, it works because it reduces the two biggest blocks of integration: threat-based evaluation and urgency. When you remove those, your system begins to soften. And when it softens, it begins to update. It rewires through repetition, and it stops turning healing into homework. Growth becomes what it was meant to be, a process of returning to yourself. Now, if your growth has been exhausting, you're not failing. You're just carrying it too tightly. You don't need to work harder on yourself. You need to relate to yourself differently, because the goal isn't to become a perfect version of you. It's to become a safe home for the version of you that exists right now. And when you become that, integration happens naturally. All right, if this episode helped you to feel seen, especially if you've been turning growth into pressure, please share it with someone who's been doing the work but feeling tired anyway. And don't forget to follow, like, and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode in this integration series. And in closing, remember, it is what it is, but it becomes what you make it. So make it great. Thanks for tuning in. Before we wrap up, I just want to remind you that the information shared in this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. It is not intended as a substitute for professional advice or treatment. While the content of this podcast is based on research and personal experience, everyone's situation is unique, and the advice given may not be applicable to all. Always consult a qualified professional before making significant changes in your life. The Personal Mastery and Growth podcast is recorded at the So Good Media Studios, located in the Candy Factory, a co-working space in Lancaster, Pennsylvania.